Good afternoon, IT Business Owners Group. I am joined today with the fine folks from Domotz, JB Fowler, and we are excited that you're here. So we are wanting to learn all about Domotz. What
Thank you.
is Domotz?
What is Domotz? It's a great question, right? Yeah. First of all, we get the question of how do you pronounce this thing anyway? And we usually, we're an Italian company.
Okay,
We started out 5, 6 years ago. Fundamentally, what we're doing is network monitoring and management.
sure.
Uh, Domotz is really how we pronounce it with long O's. But
Okay,
Domotz is a company that we created to help service providers, help integrators that may not be experts in networking better understand what's going on in their network. We really tried to implement a solution that was easy to use, very easy to implement, and really gave you a lot of knowledge about what's going on in the network, as well as all the devices that are in
okay,
that network. And I think some of the things you'll see, Scott, that we show today are really pretty awesome. And I think it'll
okay.
surprise some people on what we have there.
Well, that's great. So, you know, network visibility is so important for any MSP. It can help you troubleshoot an issue, give you insight into your client's network. What is one of the most important things that your platform does in regards to network analysis and everything?
The number one reason that I see service providers leveraging Domotz is
Hmm.
really for the the network asset monitoring, the network asset inventory aspects of
Okay.
it. One of the things that we do when you first deploy a Domotz agent onto that network is we will scan that network. We
Okay.
will look for all of the, to get a little bit technical here, we'll look for all the MAC addresses that we see on that. But where Domotz becomes so powerful and why people use us is because we take those MAC addresses and we actually convert them into, let's see, real world terms, right? You can see
Okay.
the make of that device, the model number of that device, what type of device it is. So we're really classifying all these MAC addresses that are out there, all these network-based devices, into something that is usable and documentable
Okay.
for the service provider. So when it comes to the network and understanding what's on that network, that is probably the number one reason that service providers will use us. Of course, to your point about network analytics or what we do there, we take it a step further, and we will not only look at each individual device and understand things like which ports are available on those devices for management, what's their IP
Sure.
address, what are the application protocols that are being broadcast on the network by those devices. We look at all that, but we look at that network infrastructure as well. We're going to look at the firewalls. We're going to look at the managed switches. We're going to look at the wireless access points that are out there. We're going to build a topology, a network topology that can easily be documented for that service provider. And then the service provider can use that information to understand, okay, this device that's on my network, it is physically attached to this port on this managed switch, or it's wirelessly connected to this wireless access point. Those are some of the things that we do that bring awareness about what's going on in that network that service providers typically don't know. They don't have information about that unless they use a tool like Domotz.
Well, when I have set up networks before, you mentioned that Domotz goes in and it actually pulls in the MAC address. And I know that the first two letters of any MAC address determine who makes the whatever product it is. So, but I've always struggled going, trying to Google the first two letters of the MAC address. Do you work with like Ubiquiti equipment, Unify,
Oh yeah,
integrate with
absolutely.
them?
Yeah,
Because
and
I was
your
going to say
point.
the last one that I did, it took me an hour after I configured the network to bring in and go through. Was that MAC address this? So how long does the platform take to reproduce what took me an hour?
Oh, minutes, right? And
Oh, excellent.
we will. So we scan that network. We essentially are doing, to get a little more technical, we're doing ARP requests and on the VLANs or the LANs that we're associated to, We're getting back all of those MAC addresses, but we're immediately cross-checking that against our database. And then we're enriching that data or classifying it. And we do that within minutes of being on the network. Yeah, we can tell you that you have Ubiquiti devices. We can tell you have Cisco devices. We can tell you, whether you have audio video equipment on the network or automation equipment, building management, security systems, cameras. In fact, there's a couple things on here that I think you'll be interested in, and it probably and somewhat blow your mind on what we do with respect to security cameras and systems like that, because it's really, really interesting. So, yeah.
That's excellent. Well, I am excited to learn more. So how does an MSP make money with your platform?
Always a great question. So making money is an important aspect. Revenue generation is an important aspect. What we try to do as a service to managed service providers is a tool for managed service providers to improve their business. What we're trying to do is help them bring awareness of what's on their customers' networks. We're helping them be able to remotely manage what's on their networks, whether that's the network infrastructure or it's devices that may be on that network. We're helping them reduce the costs of their operations. I kind of look at it as we have two fundamental tenets when it comes to our mission and how we help service providers. And one is to absolutely help with their operational efficiency, eliminating truck rolls, being faster at resolving problems, those types of, let's call them value props. But the second thing that I think is so important for service providers to be aware of is we're bringing you proactive monitoring, right? We're helping you know that something is wrong on the network or in the network infrastructure itself before you get a phone call from that customer. And people don't realize it, but there's a lot of value in that. And I would never want a service provider to just give that away. That's something that they should be charging for. They have a service level agreement in place with their clients already. Why not bring higher value, right? More revenue for you by being able to add this proactive monitoring. I think that's an important aspect. When I think of, and I don't want to generalize service providers too much, because the one thing that I know is every service provider does things a little bit differently. But more often than not, we see service providers charging for, the endpoints that they are monitoring, the antivirus that they're putting on there, the VPN connections, whatever it is that they may be doing. But I hope they realize that there's a whole new world out there with respect to IoT devices, right? These Internet of Things that not only affects the networks that they're installing, but there are things like unified communication systems, Microsoft Teams, Zoom meetings, these rooms that are being deployed with smart displays, right? These are all network connected devices that are consuming bandwidth that can actually bring down a network if it's not configured properly.
That's true.
These are things that a service provider should be thinking about, which is, how can I help you, right? How can I help you as a customer be more efficient with the equipment that you're installing onto these networks that I'm managing? And, this is just talking about unified communications and some of the standard Office things. One thing that we've had several blogs on, and in fact, Scott, I should probably just show some of this here, but I want service providers to be thinking about other infrastructure systems that are now connected to the network. Security cameras. That's an important part to a client's business, and it has to do with how they deal with insurance. It could be around safety and security. You can charge for that, and we'll show some of that. The access control systems, right? Again, part of security. Those are all network connected now. Making sure that they're online and functioning properly on your network, right, is a really important value that you can add to your clients.
Well, I see a huge benefit in just the plain visibility, if nothing else, for security purposes and reasons that, because you can't be at your clients all the time. You can't, lock them down, where they can't do anything. You want them to you know to be able to use what you sell them or support, but at the same time you've got to have visibility as a service provider to make sure that there's no rogue device on the network.
Yeah.
So it's that visibility for me. So
Well,
how is Domotz coming in and helping with the IoT side of things though? Because it seems like that can be just kind of crazy.
yeah, IoT in general is crazy. In fact, IoT has been an overused term as far as I'm concerned over the last
Sure.
5, maybe even a decade, because nobody knows what it is. All that they know is that they have to deal with it. But this Internet of Things has really been a challenge for network administrators. This happened, in fact, I kind of liken this to what happened 20 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever it was, when Apple came out with the iPhone, right?
Mhm.
All of these network administrators were providing to their executives or their employees BlackBerries because of the security aspects. But all of a sudden, Apple came out with a much more compelling, user interface and design. And so these executives were basically carrying around 2 phones for a couple of years.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden that the notion of the iPhone, the notion of even Android phones started coming out. It just overwhelmed the IT administrators and they had to deal with it, period. The same thing is happening in this IoT aspect. You see things like Alexas, as Amazon Alexas coming onto
Sure.
people's network. How does that affect your data network? How does that affect your network infrastructure? People are bringing in all sorts of Google devices, Google Chromes, Apple TVs are getting connected to displays because of AirPlay and the different sharing aspects. Music players, Sonos, right? Just another example where people are putting them on their desks and they have to get connected to the network to work. And network administrators are just trying to figure out, how do I deal with this? I think what most of the Domotz users, especially those that are new to it. In fact, do you mind if I share my screen?
Yeah,
Scott?
go right ahead. Go
Let's
right
do
ahead.
it. Let's get into this sharing thing here. So I'm just going to share my whole desktop so everybody
Okay.
can see this. I have to imagine people want to see this anyway. Um, you know, when people first open up the Domotz app for the first time and they see what the agent has scanned, usually what they are blown away by is how many devices are actually on that network that they did not know that they had.
Okay.
They may assume, yeah, I've got 3 switches here, 5 access points, and I've got 27 computers or whatever the number is. But
Sure.
what they don't realize is that there are Apple Watches that are connected to their network. There are Alexa devices. There are security cameras that may be on there. Depending on how, I guess I'm going to say, tight that you are with respect to your VLANs and subnetting and network administration, you likely don't know exactly what's on the network and what's not.
That's
And
right.
that's what I want to show here. So
Okay.
let me briefly describe this screen, because this is the kind of
Okay.
the fundamental Domotz screen, but then we'll get into that devices.
Okay.
Domotz, what you see here on this Domotz app, and I'm running on a Mac. The application that I'm running is essentially a desktop application, but we also have web-based applications. And one thing that I don't know if you're aware of this, Scott, but we actually have a mobile app as well. So
Okay. No, I didn't know that.
if you're running an iOS or Android, phone, we have a Domotz app that can show you kind of the same view that you get here. So
Nice.
wherever you are in the world, you can take Domotz with you. I know everybody wants to take work with them when they go, on vacation, but we can do that.
Well, sometimes if you having the ability is the only way that you can go on vacation.
It's a true statement. It's a true statement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been there and done that. Yeah. This screen we have, very multi-tenant type of view, really made for service providers type of view, because we know you have more than one customer. We have plenty of enterprise customers as well that use us in different ways, but service providers love the multi-tenancy that we're showing here and how
Okay.
we can allow each network that is being deployed to be monitored really at a kind of a global level.
Okay.
As we kind of dive into the map, right, you can see how our agents are looking. I usually go to my sites that I care about here in Draper, Utah, where I'm based out of.
Okay.
Red, yellow, green status on these dots. You know, when a site is green, everything's running as you expect. When things go yellow, it's usually a sign that you have important devices that are offline, maybe some security issues that have been found, and we'll want to talk about that.
Okay.
When we click on a dot, oh, well, when it's red, by the way, if the red, it means that that agent is fundamentally offline. You know, power outage, the network itself is down, the ISP is out, things of that nature, but we give you that type of visibility.
Okay.
When we click into a site, and this is where we start to talk about the discovery of devices. So we use this lab here. I'll just be straight up and tell you, this is my house. So you're going to see a lot of weird network connected devices, but we use it because it has so many IoT devices.
Okay.
This view that you see here, very network dashboard centric in our minds. These tiles are associated to the network itself.
Okay.
I mentioned that when we first deploy a Domotz agent, the very first thing we do is we scan the network. So we will return all of the devices that are associated with this network. We will, in fact, let's just take this Northeast camera here.
Okay.
When we first discovered, you mentioned MAC addresses. And to your point, right, the first 3 octets are usually pretty easy to find out who the manufacturer is because that's associated to a
Sure.
global database. But what we do that's different is we take the rest of that MAC address, we take things like the application protocols that are being sent out, we leverage a database of over billions of devices, and we come back with, okay, this is actually a Hikvision camera, it's this model number. Right? If we can find any information about the names, we can associate that with the name, or we can rename it ourselves. But I think the biggest factor for a service provider is that we do classify this by type. I will tell you that this is a security camera. I will tell you that it's an audio video piece of equipment. I'll tell you that it's a control system. So this is where I think the power of Domotz comes in, so that a service provider can actually start to assess a network. And they say, okay, Mr. Customer, you want me to come in and help you. Let me do a scan of your network. Here's what I see, right? I see 30 PCs. I see, 16 network infrastructure devices. I see this many security cameras. I see this type of X, Y, and Z, right? Servers, whatever it is. It really helps you know the job that you're walking into, okay? Now, when we look at these devices, and we can document all this. I'll show you how we can capture this. We will also look at these devices for what are the types of connections, right? We use the term ports that can be available to these devices. So if this device can be managed with SSH, if it can be managed through Telnet or web connectivity ports, we'll scan that and discover that automatically for you.
Nice.
If you know that a particular device, maybe you have a server that's running some sort of service, whether it's a web-based service or whatever, but it's running on a specific port, you can monitor for that. Let's take something silly. If you have a Minecraft server that's up and running on a PC in your office or at your house or wherever, you can monitor that port to make sure that it's alive for all your friends. You can actually do that through Domotz, just as one example. Now, you'll notice we have a couple things like SNMP and TCP. We also have this special thing called camera. Let's talk about this camera for a minute.
Okay.
The reason I like to show this camera is because when we discover that we have cameras on the network, we can tell you not only is the camera online, but we have the ability to show you that it's functioning properly. Whoops, I hit a button there. So we can grab a snapshot from this camera live. So why is this of value? Yeah, exactly. It's a wow statement. I love to show this because this is interesting. To me, it's one thing to show that the camera is online, but knowing that it's actually pointed in the direction that you want, that somebody hasn't covered up, that somebody hasn't painted over the screen is really helpful to the business owner.
Wow.
Right? It lets them, you can generate reports with these types of snapshots to say, hey, the 6 cameras you have, they're working properly. We checked it, right? That's useful. That is money in my mind, right? The worst thing that can happen for a business owner is they can have a slip and fall. They can have some sort of incident in the parking lot. They can have a break-in. They go back to look at their network video recorder just to find out that it wasn't recording, right? Using Domotz, you can proactively monitor all that and check that. This is just one example where knowing what's on the network, helping your clients based on those types of needs, we think adds a lot of value. So
I'm still scratching my head how you're able to pull up an image off of a data stream.
So security cameras, it's a great question, right? Security cameras in particular follow certain protocols. There's a protocol out there called OnViv, which is a standard that's out there. They do it. Security cameras and security camera manufacturers and NVR, network video recorder manufacturers, got together years ago. And they said, hey, we know that sometimes they're going to be, say, a Bosch camera or an Axis camera that needs to connect to, a Panasonic NVR or a Sony NVR or some other manufacturer. We need a way to do that via standards. Domotz essentially took advantage of that standard. And when we see that that stream is there, we recognize that there's an OnViv-based camera, which security professionals are dealing with OnViv-based cameras. We can extract that stream from the what's being broadcasted by that camera. We essentially say, hey, redirect that image to us, let us show it in our UI, and then let's go on about our business.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, we can actually, just so you know, I mean, that was an image there. We can do an actual live stream as well. It's not high resolution, but you can see that it's actually streaming video, right?
And working.
And working, exactly.
Perfect.
So that's something that you can do as well. Just kind of a cool feature.
It's windy. Trees are blowing.
It is Draper. That is a true statement today. So let's go back to this device list, because it's not about security cameras, right? To us, it's about network monitoring, network management, network infrastructure. That's the number one thing. I mentioned all these devices here. We can, I want to show you this real quickly because we work really well with documentation systems. Domotz certainly will look, classify, and understand all the network devices that are out there. But the one thing that we do is extract all of this to Excel. Look, I'm not a huge advocate of using Excel for documentation, but we all know that service providers do it regularly. But if they're using something like IT Glue, IT Portal, some of these different documentation tools out there, Domotz integrates directly into those.
Okay.
Let me bring up this Excel file here.
While you're bringing it up, I have a question. So all the things that is being brought in that we're seeing, all the granularity on each device, how much of it have you had to manually add yourself versus what Domotz put in?
The only thing, there's probably 3 fields. In fact, we can talk about that right here, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
The 3 fields that I have had to manually enter are location and zone. So you'll notice as I scroll down here, there's a bunch of devices that are in various locations or zones. Now, again, this is my house, right? So that's things like bedroom, ensuite, whatever. But the only other thing that I've really had to manually enter is if I did not like the name that Domotz had for this device, or the manufacturer gave to this device.
The default host name.
Exactly. So I may have called this is a great example, right? Back porch camera. Okay. Ensuite TV, right? Something of that nature, living room TV, right? Those are names that I would give it, but it's really only those 3 fields that I've had to manually enter. And I didn't even have to do that. In fact, you can see a lot of these devices that do not have a location or zone. It's simply because they're mobile devices, or they've come on the network and gone off the network, and I just didn't care. Right.
Gotcha.
They weren't necessarily one of the infrastructure devices. So now, the reason I actually bring up this page is not only to tell you how we can list it, we can show information about the status of the devices, when they came on the network, what their host names were. We can use this Excel file here to actually go in and rename information. Okay, we can state whether a device is important or not, right? True or false that it's important. So I can filter. I just like using these cameras because it's nice and simple. Everybody understands it. But we can take these cameras, we can sort by the type of device that's out there. We can enter whatever information we want. In fact, I can even add notes if I have username, passwords, or if I have details about this camera that I want to make notes on, like we're working on it today or whatever. I can save that here. I then can import that information back into the Domotz UI and just do a mass update to this one network. So
rather than going to each one in Domotz and, clicking it and editing it. Okay. So you can do it all right there. Nice.
Yep.
So I do have another quick question for you.
Yeah.
So what happens when you have a dynamic IP address that's constantly changing on your network? Obviously that wouldn't be updated in Excel, but on the platform itself, does it constantly update in Domotz as well? So if you want to see what the current IP address is, just go to the platform and it'll tell you.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Right. And in fact, that brings up a really, really interesting question as it relates to documentation systems. So take IT Glue as an example. The thing that we did with respect to the integration between Domotz and IT Glue, in fact, let me just close out of Excel here because we don't need to talk about that portion anymore. And let's go again back to this camera. Okay. We grab a lot of information about the network aspects of a device that's on that network. Okay. Your point about IP address. Okay. Domotz associates devices with a unique identifier, which for each device on a network happens to be the MAC address. Okay. That is unique for everybody that's out there. If it's not, you have other problems that the network is going to challenge with. But when we integrate with a tool like IT Glue, right, what we have done is we've provided some two-way synchronizations, which says, okay, what tool should be the master record? Okay, the assumption that we have actually is the documentation tool is more likely than not going to be the master of the information. But we allow you to say which fields within that documentation tool should be synchronized from Domotz or should be synchronized to Domotz. Okay, so an example would be, let's say somebody has a laptop, a PC that's at their desk, and let's say it's on the first floor in office A. Okay, you can associate that documentation so that we take the information like zone and location as the master record from the documentation system and bring that into Domotz. Okay. But let's say that person moves, they go up to the third floor and they're in office C. You update it into the documentation system. When the information is synchronized with Domotz, it'll automatically be updated within Domotz. We're using the MAC address to keep that information associated with each system, right? That unique identifier. So it's a powerful way to keep you in a common dashboard, in this case, the documentation system, but getting the information that you care about updated. Now, we also know, to your point about IP addresses, that the documentation system is very static when it comes to IP addresses, but Domotz is very dynamic, right? We know that the network information broadcast by that device will change, and it's up to Domotz to provide information back to IT Glue in this case with the new IP address. And we will do that in real time for you.
Is that done with a sync, or is that just basically real time that you don't even see?
So you have two ways of doing it. First of all, we'll just synchronize the system once every 12 hours if you're not looking at it. But if you want to synchronize it immediately, you can do that as well. So
gotcha.
Documentation tool.
Okay, so if you don't touch it, it's going to sync automatically every 12 hours. Okay.
Yep. So twice a day, you're going to see that. Yes. Yeah. It's good stuff. So I haven't even talked about the network infrastructure yet and the things we do there. Right. One of the cool things that Domotz will do is we look at all of the managed switches. We look at all the wireless access points. We interrogate those through things like SNMP, right? Simple Network Management Protocol, so that we can do this, so that we can build out a topology. Let's shrink this down because this is a really large network. So that we can build a topology of what does this network look like, Okay, this is where we start getting into the network diagnostics, the network management aspects of what Domotz can do. We can, if I click on this manage switch here, we can see all the information that I was showing you about each individual device, but we're now telling you which devices are connected to which ports, how much power is being consumed by these, how much bandwidth is being consumed by these particular devices. That's a bad example since it looks like it went offline. Let's look at this camera. There we go. In fact, here you can see, right? We did a configuration change on the camera. The camera went offline for some time before we brought it back up, right? But you can see the average bandwidth being consumed as seen by the switch for that particular device. We can look at errors being thrown by this device or the switch. We can see packets being discarded by the switch for this device. We can see average bandwidth and stuff. And this to me is one of the key benefits of helping service providers better diagnose what's going on in the network and how things are being handled and routed. We also will look at, let's look at this WAP. So this is a wireless access point here. We can see the types of devices. Maybe this one might be better if it shows. We can see the types of clients that are connected to this system. Oh, this Ring Pro here. We can look at these devices. We can look at the amount of latency through the system. And this I like to use the wireless devices to show latency just because it varies a lot more than wired devices, but a very powerful tool for showing things like, you know, if you're starting to see dropped packets, right? Why is that? What's going on? If you're seeing latency increase over time, what on the network is driving that decreased performance? Right? These are the types of things that Domotz shows to our users that we think is really powerful. On the wireless side, showing things like signal strength, which wireless SSIDs are these devices connected to? How are they performing? What do their radios look like? What channels are they in? These are all the types of things that Domotz shows that really gives power to these integrators to understand what's going on in the network.
So Domotz is all informational though, right? Like I do have a question. So we deploy Unify typically as a standard for our network stuff.
Yeah.
And so if I have a client that calls me and says, hey, I can't print, one of the first things I do before I even go into their machine is, you know, go to the network, the Unify area, and see what's the IP address. Is it listed? Is that printer still showing? And a lot of times you can go in and you can hit reboot right there. Will we be able to do anything like that? Will you be able to reboot, or is it more informational?
Absolutely. What I would tell you is you get the broader picture through Domotz as opposed to going into the Unify system directly.
Okay.
Unify is really good at managing itself. Okay. But it really knows nothing about the printer itself. Okay.
Right.
With Domotz, first of all, you're going to see, again, let's go back to that discussion around proactive alerting. Okay. You're going to see, in fact, I probably have, if I type HP, so I probably in here have an HP printer, right? That is a color laser jet in my office that we can, one, see is online or offline. Okay. The second thing that we're going to see is if you want to set up ink or toner levels through SNMP to see the status of those, you can do that, right? We're going to give you that picture as well as all the information about Unify, right? And what the Ubiquiti WAPs are seeing. Now, I do want to point out, okay, and let's talk about how we manage the network infrastructure a little bit, okay? When it comes to the Unify WAPs or the Ubiquiti switches or the Cisco switches or the Meraki systems, right? We're going to provide you a way that you can remotely connect into those devices so that you can manage them, okay?
Okay.
To manage that device itself. But if that customer calls you and says, hey, this printer's not working, using a tool like Domotz actually gives you broader visibility as to what's going on. Is that system online? If it's not, let's power cycle it. We can do that, okay? Let's get in and reboot it. So you're intrigued by the power cycling thing. I've shown you how in a network switch, right? If I click on this network, on this network switch here, I can see the interfaces, right? I can power cycle these if I need to, okay? right here. If I were to take this living room touchscreen, I could turn it off right here. I don't want to do that, but I can. We also have the ability, let's back out. I'll show you this.
So is that, when you cut it off, is that pretty much like the block feature?
That
Is that?
No, that is essentially a hard power cycle of the PoE.
Okay. Okay. So these are, okay. I see it at the top above it there,
Yeah.
above the green.
So,
those are PoE switches. Okay.
yeah. So these devices here, like this one's consuming 15 watts of PoE. This one's consuming 5 watts, right? So these are part of the control system that's in this house.
Okay.
We could actually power cycle those here. But let's go look at a SurgeX device. So why do I look at SurgeX? SurgeX is a PDU, power distribution unit. Okay, so PDUs are often used with service providers. I see them being used more in like server rooms where you're dealing with multiple PCs and you need to maybe hard power cycle or meter these devices. In the integration world, you often see PDUs being installed into things like this, where you've got, you know, video conferencing systems, smart displays, digital signage. But the power of a PDU, and I like to use this particular PDU because this is just one we use for demos, is I can associate different devices on the network to an outlet on that PDU, and then I can power cycle them, okay? So Domotz has the ability to say, okay, if you're having trouble with, this happens to be an amplifier in the kitchen. If you're having trouble with this particular kitchen amplifier, you can power cycle it directly from that system using these PDUs. I have another one. Let's go back out here so you can just see how this works. I think if I type the word theater, okay, here you'll see different devices. Again, think of them as IoT devices that are connected to a system. Here's a projector, not even network connected, but we put it as a dummy device. You'll see that it has a little plug on it. I can go in here to this device and I can power cycle it right there through Domotz. Okay.
Gotcha.
So if that customer, just like you were talking about with the printer, if they were to call you and say, hey, our printer's not working, the first thing you may want to try is just hard power cycle. See if that comes back up. If that doesn't, then start looking at the network infrastructure. Look at the latency, look at the network performance. Are packets being dropped? What's going on here, right? You can do all of that remotely through Domotz.
This is very, very nice.
We're really proud of what we built here. We've got 30 plus engineers that have done an amazing job, not only at a network infrastructure level and really getting you to understand what's going on in the network, using a lot of standards, using a lot of protocols and building that into our cloud-based system. But I really think that our UI team did a bang up job of making it so that you can take this type of application, and even if you're not a networking expert, get knowledge about what's going on in the network. You know, one of the most, I find it kind of ironic, okay, Scott? One of the most complex things in networking is actually simple network management protocol. I don't know who came up with that name, but I always like to show this system here. Geist is a product by Vertiv that is a temperature humidity sensor.
Okay.
I use it because it's a network-based SNMP system, but I like it because it shows the power of how we can look deeper into devices. So looking at this device, and I have some things set up, but let me show you how I set it up. If I wanted to add an object identifier, an OID, to this device, all we have to do is go to add SNMP sensor. I then can search. So let's say I want to search for temperature. I type in the word temp or temperature. It comes up with all the OIDs or the OID tables that are available for this particular device. And then it's really easy for me to add it. I can just hit this add if this is the particular OID I care about. I already have this, so I'll just back out so I can show you. But here you can see, here's the temperature, okay? This is showing the raw data coming from that sensor over the last month, the historical values. You can see that, and if you're familiar with how they've managed data within SNMP or OIDs, this is actually in tenths of a degree. I have a real problem if my rack room is actually 958 degrees Fahrenheit, right? But this is 95.8 degrees based on where I am now. But I can see information about temperature, humidity, CPU utilization, memory consumption, hard disk drive space. Is the UPS, running as I expect? Is it on battery? Is it not? How much load is there? All of this information that's available through SNMP can be brought into the Domotz UI. And more importantly, what you can do with it is you can set proactive alerts on it.
Okay.
Right? So I can come in here and say, hey, when the rack temperature gets above 105 degrees, generate an alert. Open up a ticket, right? Open up something in ConnectWise, open up something in Synchro, right? So that I can then manage it through those dashboards that I care about so much, right? That's the power of what we've done here with Domotz. We've taken this extremely, complex networking topic, and we've simplified it and made it easy to do this. So this is what I'm excited about. And I think service providers, when they try this, they have that wow moment that is like, this is great. And at $19 a month, why not do this on every customer site?
Absolutely. So getting into pricing, is it $19 for unlimited or $19 per site?
It is $19 per agent. That is
okay.
Okay. It's important that I use the word agent here. In fact, let's do this. Let's bring up, just so that we're very clear and transparent, right? If you go to our webpage, domotz.com, right there under pricing, you'll see it, right? Even
per
using
site.
Transparent, right? $19 per month per site. The reason that we say site and the reason I use the term agent is because a lot of people know that a site can have multiple VLANs. It can have multiple subnets. One Domotz agent can look across VLANs. They can look across subnets. It's just a matter of how do you set up the network interface card that the Domotz agent is on. And speaking of that agent, one thing I should point out is that an agent can run on a Windows machine. It can run on a Linux machine. It can run on a little black box that you purchase from Amazon. It can run on a Raspberry Pi or a NAS drive. The agent is really, really easy to deploy.
Okay.
Yeah. So we tried to make this as seamless as possible. And in fact, just within the last couple of weeks, we've announced the fact that integrations with companies like Synchro and Kaseya with IT Glue and Kaseya VMS are now included in this $19 price. So we're doing a lot of things to help our service providers and our customers get as much use out of this as possible.
Got it. That's beautiful.
So, one thing I mentioned, Scott, at the beginning too, and I just want to touch on this, and then we can get to some of the other questions, but I think it's an important side. When I showed this front-end dashboard here, this NOC view, right, Network Operations Center, I mentioned some things about security issues, right, and things like that we can find. I want to point out that while Domotz, I'm going to say, excuse my French, but really kicks ass with respect to documentation of all of the devices that are out there. And we do a really great job of the network management side of it. We also bring awareness to you about what's going on from a security point of view. I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that we are a SOC or we're an SIEM, right? SIEM. But we absolutely bring awareness to devices that are on the network and some vulnerabilities that may be exposed there. How do we do that? Okay. Actually, let's go to this one up here, this particular site, just because it has so many issues. We have this network security tab. There's three things of this security tab that I think are so very, very powerful. First and foremost is we're going to tell you when new devices get put on a network and what those devices are, which is really what this device discovery aspect is. So we can see here that there were Watt boxes, there was some other hub system that was put on here from Crestron, right? So we can see that that was put on this network. I suspect that this is one of my friends. In fact, I know it's one of my friends, it's their home network. So we will see these types of things. So take an example of a VLAN that is associated with a credit card system, a point of sale system.
Okay.
The last thing that client wants or you want is a rogue device to be plugged into that network that could either affect the point of sale system or ruin the whole PCI compliance aspect of it.
Sure.
Domotz can monitor those networks and make sure that if a new device shows up, that you're aware of it immediately and that you can then take action on it. So that's one aspect, I think, of security that is so important and so valuable when it comes to Domotz here.
So what we're looking at right there, can you go back one?
Yeah, sure.
So the device discovery, so is that just with one site, or is that across all agents that are in your dashboard?
Well, this is across one site because I'm looking at that site.
Okay, gotcha.
But you can generate alerts across all of your agents, right? You can do these, what we call shared alerts that go into things like your ticketing system. And it would have said, right, if you would have had a shared alert in something like Synchro, okay, or ConnectWise Manage or AutoTask, it would have said, you know, Wattbox device showed up on this network, okay, at this time with this IP address, okay? And we would have provided you with a link to that system so that you could then go in and debug it directly if you wanted to.
Nice.
Yeah. So we're bringing that type of awareness to you through the tools you're using already. So that's with respect to new devices, that's what we do. You'll notice we also scan for ports being open, okay? I already showed you how on each device we can give you information about which ports are there. We do that, you know, Telnet, SSH, port 80, others, right? You can add your own ports.
Sure.
But we also look for at the firewall or at the router level, are there ports being opened from the cloud back into the network, right? On the WAN side, back into the LAN that are open that maybe shouldn't be, okay? Now,
that's nice.
This is just one example. You can see there are lots of ports here because we do demos here. But of all these ports, right, you can either accept or reject. We're not going to block them, but we're bringing awareness to you so that you can then go into your firewall and manage it appropriately, or you can accept it, right? If you know that this port should be open to a particular server, okay, you leave it there.
Well, typically you'd only get this information out of the firewall.
Correct, right? I look at, we have service providers today. In fact, we have a couple case studies on our website where service providers, they absolutely set in sonic firewalls, Fortinet gateways, things of that nature. But they use Domotz just as a secondary check for their clients to make sure that things are getting set up properly, okay?
Very nice.
Yeah, and then the last thing is from the inside out. UPnP, right, Universal Plug and Play is a legacy technology. Generally, most service providers will disable that as well as they should, but some systems may still require it. If there are devices, you know, IoT devices that get plugged into your network, the first thing they're going to do is look for a port out via UPnP, okay? Bringing awareness to you that we see devices doing that is, again, an important side of how we help understand the vulnerabilities that may be exposed on your network. So this is why we give these capabilities. And I think it's an important part of network monitoring and management. So, you know, to kind of summarize our key values that I see, you know, documentation of what's on the network is super helpful to service providers. That network monitoring side, what's going on the network and how do we manage that network is an important aspect. And then the security thing, I think, really provides an inherent value as well. You know, one thing I should show you, Scott, because I don't know, I mean, we talk about network monitoring and management. I should point out the remote connections in VPN and how we can go in and manage devices individually or as a whole on the network is pretty powerful here. As I said, we discover all the devices that are on the network and what ports are available. I'll do a quick connection here to this switch, okay?
Okay.
I can easily connect to port 80, right, the web-based port. I'm at my office. We're making a secure connection to the cloud. Oh, because I connected to this today already, my credentials were already in. But it normally would ask for, in fact, let's go back and let's just do a different device.
The credentials for the switch.
For the switch, yeah. Let's connect to switch number 2 here. Because I don't think I've logged into that today. There you go. See, something went wrong when you go to do that. Gotta love live demos. So we can I'm gonna try it again. I may have reconfigured something on this network because I've been playing with VLANs, and I want to find you a connection here. So we can directly connect into those switches so that we can then manage that, or any system that's on there.
Okay.
Let's look at this device. So this is our router. I should be able to connect to that pretty easily. Yeah, here we go. So here you can see the credentials. The reason I wanted to show you this is a couple things. You'll notice that the URL here that we've been given, it's
Okay.
a URL, it's unique to my laptop, and I can't pass this off to a colleague in my office and have them work it. It's something that is secure and unique to me.
Okay.
And when I enter this, you can see that I now have the secure connection directly to this router here.
Okay. So this router is not where you are right now presently.
No,
You're at a different location.
yeah,
This is all being done from the cloud.
correct. This is miles away. So I am actually
Wow.
really connected over our office to the Domotz cloud, right? Securely encrypted. And then the cloud itself is actually re-encrypting it with direct connection back into that network agent. Okay.
That's awesome.
So this allows me a direct connection to this device. But one thing I'll show you here is that I also can, going back to this, and I won't do it since we're on a live demo, but I can actually create a secure VPN connection as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
I can turn the Domotz agent into a VPN host, and then I can use VPN software on my laptop to create that secure connection as well. So there's just a couple powerful ways in which you can get into the system through Domotz using the credentials of Domotz as opposed to common username and passwords to enable all this. You know,
Very nice.
I can go to, the reason I want to mention this is for us, having these secure connections with your team members, making sure your team members are using things like 2FA, right, two-factor authentication, making it either mandatory for your system, or I think more importantly, if I move this over a little bit, going to my account here, doing things like single sign-on, right, SAML, taking advantage of those systems that are out there and securely logging in through those, I think are just the right ways in which your customers, or excuse me, your team members should be logging into your customers' accounts.
Getting back to two-factor, what two-factor do you use? Do you like Authy? Do you support Authy? And what about YubiKeys, hardware-based?
So for us, we're using secondary or application-based authenticators, things like Duo, LastPass, Google Authenticator. So when you enable this, right, I'd have to enter my password, but then it would give a key, and I don't want everybody to have that, so I won't do it.
Sure.
But when I do enable that, right, it's going to give you that QR code that those tools can then scan, and then you're logging into your phone app and using something like Duo to then get the key. That's what we do.
Okay, so but it doesn't sound like it supports then the hardware-based. Have you ever heard of YubiKeys? Ubico? Okay,
Yeah,
so does it support that as well?
I don't know how those systems get set up and whether you can pass the key that we give to them and whether it will then work on that hardware key. But
Gotcha.
we should try that. I should definitely.
Yeah.
I can work with our team. I'm sure that Giancarlo, our CPO, is probably looking that up right now. So, yeah. So lots of, I mean, I hope I've been able to, show your audience, right? Show that everybody that's watching this webinar, whether it's live or they're going to watch it later, some of the power of what Domotz has here and the capabilities. I mean, we haven't even talked about, some of the reporting aspects, which to me, continuous communications with your clients and staying in touch with your clients, I think is so important. And when you look at things like the reporting and logging, not only from an audit perspective of what's going on in your network or how are your team members dealing with your clients' networks, but also just being able to communicate with your customer to say, hey, these are the things we did for you this last month. And we had to power cycle these devices. These are the tickets that got opened, et cetera, I think is just extremely useful.
I am blown away.
Good.
I love it. It's I'm a network guy anyway, so I like networking, and I'm overall an IT guy, but we definitely work with networks and implement networks for our clients. So
Yeah.
managing and maintaining the networks after is another story. So so far we've only been using the default Ubiquiti that is very limited. And like I said, we don't have an agent. It just gives us MAC addresses, and we have to go and track each one down, and it may take an hour. So
We,
this is very
yeah,
impressive.
we did a webinar with one of our partner vendors called Hostify, which they're
Yeah.
very heavily focused on Unify. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Yeah. They're a sponsor of ours.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. The things that they do is amazing. And when you look at that, like what Unify itself has, okay, and of course, Hostify makes it even that much better. But then when you look at what Domotz does with respect to the monitoring and that integration, the alerting side of it versus what Unify provides, it's just superior. And then when you look at these integrations, I brought up the services and the integrations page that we have. You can see all of these different tools that we integrate with pretty natively. You can go to our integrations page on our website and you'll see all the also hardware services. It just makes it kind of a no-brainer to use a tool like this to just improve, I'm going to use the words again, operational efficiency out of your organization.
Well, the tool is very mature. You would think that your company has been around 10, 20 years. How long has Domotz been around?
We've been around for about 5 years now.
Okay. Okay.
And it's really been within the last year to year and a half, I'd say last year, that we
Okay.
really started to get a hold of all of these different services that I'm showing and integrate those into the Domotz environment. So that way, yeah, you build out a proper ecosystem. I'm very fond, right, as the product manager of the solution that we have. I'm very fond of our user interface, but I also 100% recognize the fact that a service provider is often going to be leveraging, right, these types of tools, okay, these
Sure.
documentation systems, and that is their primary dashboard. That's their primary pane of glass. So what we've done is we've made it easy to install, easy to deploy, easy to integrate into these services. So that way, you're not having to deal with another tool that you have to learn. And if you do need to go into Domotz to make that remote connection, to go manage the Unify devices in your case, or the Meraki systems or Cisco, that you can easily do that.
How much system resources on the network does a typical Domotz agent take and
Very,
utilize?
very minimal, very minimal.
Okay. So minimal impact.
Yeah, of course, when we are looking at a given agent, because you look at, I'll just bring up my network again here. When I expand this, I mean, you can see that I have just 100 and something devices that are active on this. Okay, I've got this set up as a /22 type of network, so I can look at 1,024 devices at one time. We are essentially pinging these devices in a very strategic way to see that they're either online or offline so that we can generate alerts. But we are not flooding the network by any means. In fact, we intentionally limit our VLANs that we will check, right, to a /22 on the primary and a /24 or 256 devices. But you can set up multiple VLANs out there. But we do that strategically so that we don't consume resources on the network.
Gotcha.
Right? The one time that we do consume resources is actually when we are doing ISP speed tests. So people are going to be familiar with systems like Ookla. We use InLab and FAST to do testing. Okay, but when we do this, obviously we try to max out the bandwidth of the network. That's the only time that we would really consume some resources on that network.
And I'm sorry if you said it already, how often do you go through and do this? Is it a regular thing so you can get like the graph from 3 months, 6 months, a year?
So speed tests occur once every 6 hours.
Okay.
And you can disable that, right? I mean, if you've got a company that has, 100 megabit DSL, okay, and you have confidence that it's up and running, you can disable this. If you don't even want to check their ISP speeds, you don't have to, but you can. We provide information as well about the ISP around what is the public IP address that's there, what are the gateways that are coming into it. In fact, in the very, very near future, you're going to see alerts being able to be generated if your public IP address changes or if your ISP service changes. So
Okay.
it's helpful because a lot of systems will have redundancy when it comes to their WAN services, which they should, a business should. But again, giving you as the service provider awareness to that, we think is a very useful tool.
Most definitely. So I'm seeing account and branding. What is that?
I love it. Yeah, it's a great question. So two things that I'll mention here. You'll notice on this page, in fact, our little video is right over this, but you'll notice this logo in the upper right corner here, Cool Cat.
Cool
Right?
Cat.
That's just a silly little brand. The reason we enabled it on the knock screen is because while this screen is extremely useful for support teams so that they can see if a red dot all of a sudden shows in a given area or a region.
Sure.
We find that a lot of service providers, a lot of commercial integrators will actually have this screen up and visible so that when their customers come into the office, they can see that they're being very proactive.
Okay, I was wondering, I was like, well, I thought if the service provider is the only one looking at this and they're not sending it out to their clients, why do we need to brand it? But that makes total sense.
Yeah, this knock screen gets used a lot for marketing purposes, which
Gotcha.
we think is great. I mean, we have in our office a couple screens in the background that we have it up just so we can help watch our own clients, right?
Sure.
But when you go into this report as well, so I mentioned the reports and logging, okay? The reason, if you generate one of these reports, whether it's automatic or not, you send it to your customer, it's not coming with Domotz information. What it's coming with is your information, your logo, your office, your contact information, how to get a hold of you as a service provider. So
Gotcha.
That's what we've enabled here. And if you go to branding, you'll see that little Cool Cat logo that I did there. So yeah, that's
very neat. Well, that is a very, very, very nice platform. You've went over everything. I'm out of questions because you answered all of them. So that is wonderful. Anything else particularly? What's your favorite thing about the Domotz platform? What's your personal favorite?
So my favorite thing of this is probably the fact that it has saved my marriage more than once. Okay. So you saw my network. I can show you just how complex it is, right? When you look at all those devices, I have an automation system in there. I've got digital video being distributed over the network, and inevitably things fail. And so usually what happens is I'm either on a business trip or I'm here at the office. I get the text from my wife that says, the effing TV is broken again, right? And so I log into Domotz, right? I actually will see the alert. I know the message is coming from my wife, okay? But I will log in, I'll power cycle the video distribution box because inevitably it's this one particular product that I know just fails. I'll power cycle it and I get her back and running, in another 3 minutes and she can watch the TV again. But that aspect right there has been one of the most amazing features. And I will tell you for that our integrators that are deploying unified communications or digital signage into sports bars or gymnasiums, when they get a phone call from their customer, in fact, one thing that's kind of cool, let me show you this. I'll go into my house and show you this video distribution system. So I use a product called Wirestorm. And this is just very common. You'll see Crestron has systems like this. But if I go into this controller, I can actually see how the encoders, the video encoders, are deployed across the network to the video decoders. So I can see that this Apple TV 4K is actively connected to the home theater right now, okay? And in fact, if I had the living room and the home theater and the playroom all watching that same Apple TV, which you can do with just like a digital signage system, we would see 3 lines being connected to that, okay?
Gotcha.
So when, in the example that a service provider or a commercial integrator is dealing with a sports bar, and they get a call from that manager that says, hey, you know, we're not able to watch this game because this TV's not working, right? Or the system's not working. That doesn't mean much to the integrator unless they're there. What
Sure.
Domotz allows them to do is actually get a view of not only the video distribution system, but the network it's running across and the source, right? The dish network box or DirecTV box and the digital display. So I can go in and see, if I go back to his devices list and let's just pull up Sony, right? This Sony TV, it's actually online right now. I can see that it's up and running, okay? We can give all sorts of information like that.
Very nice.
Yeah. So this is just, again, some of the power of what Domotz does. You know, we go after multiple markets. We've got an integration side that we think Domotz is really useful. We've got the service provider side, which we think when it comes to network monitoring and management is really the, am I allowed to say the bee's knees, or is that like, so
works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of power here. I didn't go in and talk about all the details about how you can set up alerts. We talked about some, but going into ticketing system, I mean, this is just, it's a powerful, powerful tool.
Can you show us an example of how you would set up an alert quickly?
Sure. So a couple different types of alerts, right? First and foremost, we've got these things called personal alerts.
Okay.
Actually, let's talk about network alerts and device alerts. You can alert when the network itself goes down. So if the internet service goes down, or if a new device on the network is shown, right? And I talked a little bit about that, but you can set it up so that it can do what we call a personal alert, which means that it either does a push notification to my mobile device,
Okay.
or it'll do an email to whomever I'm logged in as, okay? So here I am as jdfowler@gmail.com. If the speed of the network, the ISP, goes below a particular threshold, I can alert on that as well if I'm concerned about it. I can do the same type of personal alerts for each device that's out there. And I showed a little bit about this, right? If I wanted to set an alert when the temperature of the rack goes above a certain threshold, I can set that up, okay?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, but where a service provider is going to get way more value on this, let's do it under the shared alerts here under network, is when they want to associate a ticketing system or a messaging system like Slack or Microsoft Teams into this. The way we do this, the way we set up an alert, we come to the shared alerts and ticketing systems. We can create a new channel, as we call it, or we can add a channel to these. I'll just pull up this Microsoft Teams and data one. So if I wanted to add a contact channel, one of these systems that I've already configured, a contact channel can be a ticketing system. It can be a messaging system like Slack or Telegram. It can also just be a general email, right? If I wanted to go to, support@itbog.com, right? Whatever it is, I could do that, okay? I can add as many channels as I want, right? So I can do a messaging channel and a ticketing system and an email, or I can do one or the others. I then can say, for this type of alert, what events on the network or what events on a device will trigger that type of alert or that alert.
Gotcha.
So if a device goes down, I want to get a notification. If a configuration within a managed switch or a firewall changes, okay? If somebody went in and added a VLAN, okay, to that managed switch, I can generate an alert on that. If I want to look at an SNMP event, like the temperature going too high, or maybe a particular string of characters equaling a different value, okay, I can set alerts on that.
Okay.
If the performance of a device, right, if the latency associated with the device goes up beyond a threshold, I can alert on that. Even things like if a new feature within Domotz is discovered about a device, I can get an alert on that, so I can then go configure my system. There's a lot of capabilities and a lot of ways in which we can generate alerts, right? Even the security alerts that we talked about. Once I've set those events here, I can then associate it to the channels like we talked about. I can name it, give it a color if I want to do that. But now the system is set up and ready to go. So now anytime, and we, by the way, Scott, we have help pages, so help.domotz.com, and we've got blog posts in our community forums that talk about examples of setting these systems up, just so you know. So if you want to see exactly how to set up ConnectWise Manage, or you want to see exactly how to set up Synchro or
It's in the
Freshservice,
help.
let's go to our help pages. But
Okay.
once you have all that, you're ready to go. It's that simple.
So when we're talking pricing, and I know you said per site, it's $19 a month. What kind of commitments do you have?
Month to month.
Okay, beautiful.
In fact, the one thing I wanted to say to your audience, and I'm sure we would have gotten to it at the end, you can try Domotz for 21 days free.
Okay.
Right? Just, you really go on to domotz.com, create an account, deploy an agent. In fact, I meant to show, I know we talked about it, but the first screen that you get to when you create an account is actually this one where it says add an agent. The easiest thing to do if you just want to test it, kick the tires, download this Windows agent, deploy it. You need one agent per site, and it will scan the network for you. And then it will take you to that apps page that we talked about. But if you're more savvy and you want to deploy this on a Raspberry Pi or through a Linux virtual service, go for it, right? In fact, you'll notice you can even deploy Domotz within the cloud. So if you're running services within the cloud, maybe you're dealing with, you've set up your own Unify service in your own AWS cloud, you can monitor that right through Domotz. So there's some really cool things that we do. A lot of our service providers find us actually through Synology, QNAP, some of these NAS drives, because we're deployed in their stores. So that's another way in which you can deploy an agent. But kick the tires, try it out. I think you're going to love it. But then to your point, for each agent that you deploy, yes, it's only $19.
Okay. Excellent. So, and once again, all anyone has to do is go to domotz.com and then create an account. And once you create an account, where will they go to get the trial, the 21 days?
So when they log in,
Okay.
I'll show you. So when you log out here, I'll just enter my credentials here. It is going to bring you immediately to this page. And once you download it, you're good to go. And that 21 days just will start running.
Okay, perfect. So that's with everybody, every new account gets 21 days.
Yeah, and in all fairness, we actually think 21 days, to be perfectly honest with you, is probably a little too long. We find that most people that have deployed an agent know within 3 to 4 days that they love the service and that they're ready to start deploying and inserting that credit card. So,
well, how long have we been doing this? An hour and 15 minutes. I already love it. I don't need the trial. I know I love it. So it's a beautiful platform here. Thank you for sharing it with me.
Oh, I appreciate the time. I do want to point out one last thing, which is, when people deploy an agent and they get out there, inherently they have some question on something, right? How do I configure a VLAN? How do I do this or that? I have to tell you, our support team, right? Support at domotz.com is amazing. We have an extremely fast first-time response. And I think you're going to see that our team is extremely savvy. Network engineers that have been doing this for years. They've deployed large networks. They're good. They're good. And we cover a lot of time zones. I never said this at the beginning, but Domotz actually started in Europe, based in Italy. Probably part of the reason we have a funny name. But with that, we have engineers that are sitting in Italy. We have engineers that are sitting in North America, teams that are in Bulgaria. So we're a worldwide company, and we can really cover a lot of the support needs 24/7. So I invite people to check out our support as well.
Well, thank you so much for a broad demonstration. I really appreciate your time today and you helping us get this out to our members so we can see exactly what Domotz is all about. So I think I said it right that time.
I like it.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, did you get a chance to look at the Facebook group to see if there were any comments that we might need to address while we're still live?
I had my team, since I'm sharing this desktop, I had them hoping that they would send me some questions.
Okay.
I think that what I'm getting told here by Violet and Giancarlo is that it looks like we're covered pretty well. I think we actually hit a lot of the points. So yeah, I think we're looking good there.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Well, we'll get Violet to go back in and answer any of the questions that I can't answer, and we'll go from there. Well, thank you again for your time, JB. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.